Hey Strike Eagle fans, Natso is back with you for another in the series for the F-15E Strike Eagle tutorials. Today we're going to do PACS Part 3, the Programmable Armament Control System. I know it's been a long time since I've done the last two, Part 1 and Part 2. It's been several months, but I wanted to jump in and show you a couple new features that we've added since then. Before I go into the jet, I want to take you kind of on a quick walk around of the mission editor load page. It's obviously very similar to how the other modules work, but I want to go into some nuances and specifics of how the Strike Eagle itself loads weapons. And I think you guys will find this pretty useful. And then what we'll do is we'll jump in a jet and start loading weapons. So you can see on the load page, you've got the normal skin stuff, so you can obviously go in and select all your different stuff. I've got a rocket jet. This is the tail number that I flew back in the day. But you can go select any of the other stuff. Really cool Mountain Home anniversary tail. Different stuff you can scroll through it. The one thing I want to point out is Tim has done a bunch of good stuff with both clean and dirty stuff. So you've got a nice clean jet if you like nice and pretty, or if you want the really grimy, dirty jet that's been deployed, you can also do that. One thing I want to show you here is you can also change the tail number, and that's pretty dynamic as well. So for instance, a 91 tail, my jet that I flew at Lake Neath was 332, so I can type that in, and you can see that's dynamic, and it changes on the jet as well. And the cool thing is it also changes on the AR door number as well as on the nose gear door number once the gear is down. Obviously, I can't show you here, but that will all change accordingly. So I'll leave it here. You guys can explore all the different skins, all kinds of good stuff. Tim's even got some of the ones that are already pre-made with pre-made tail numbers with different liveries. So those are fun to play with. But what I want to do is I want to show you some of the load nuances of how to load the jet up. The weapon stations are numbered in this case on DCS from right to left. Obviously in the real jet it would normally go left to right. But you can see over here 8A and B are the missile air-to-air missile rails. Sorry, I keep having to remind myself to go to the opposite side on the right. And then 2A, 2B are the missile rails on the left-hand side, and then 2 and 8 are the main pylons where you can carry either fuel tanks or air-to-ground stores. Over here on the CFTs, so you've got right CFT, left CFT, and then you've got the air-to-air missile stations 6, 7, 3, and 4. Those are the air-to-air specific weapon stations that you can put on the CFT itself. The big thing here to note is you can't have a mix of the air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons on the same CFT. So let me just demonstrate that. So if let's say I put some bombs on the right CFT, I'll put some Mark 84s, and then if I go in and go, hey, I want to put an AIM-7 on there, notice it replaces the air-to-ground weapon. So it's smart enough to know, hey, you've asked me, the last thing you've asked me to do is put an air-to-air weapon on that. I'm going to remove the air-to-ground stations because I can't have both. So the interface is actually pretty smart. But what I can do is I can load up individual air-to-air stations for each of these, but I can only load a single type of air-to-ground. So if I go right CFTs, note I can only pick something from the air-to-ground side and only one type. So I can go Mark 82s or whatever the case may be. I can put a GB24 on that. But if I want to go over to the air-to-air, I've got to choose an individual one. But then I can put a different type of air-to-air weapon on the other station on that side. So you can mix air-to-air but not air-to-ground. So notice right now I've got an AIM-7 and an AIM-120 on the same CFT, and that's perfectly normal and legal. You can do that. So that's why there's individual stations for the air-to-air, but only one station for the CFT. I can load up the pods. Note the nav pod only goes on the right-hand side, and the target pod only goes on the left-hand side. And again, I've got to keep reminding myself that it's backwards as I go there. The Station 5 is the center line store, so I can carry either tanks or like data link pods. We don't have those in game yet, or I can carry air-to-ground weapons on there as well. So the other thing I want to show you is the restrictions. Most of the restrictions are enforced. It's not 100% right now, but for instance, there are certain restrictions where if I've got certain air-to-ground stores On the CFT, I'm now limited to what I can carry on the wing pylons. So I'll do a one of the common restrictions you can't do is you can't put 6 CBU-87s on the CFTs and then try to put a fuel tank on that same side. Notice how fat the CBU-87s are, so they take up a lot of space. So if I go in and try to put a fuel tank on that side, notice it removes the CBUs. Again, it's going to use whatever the last input you had. So if you start seeing stuff disappear, that is totally normal. That's not a bug. That's designed that way so it enforces some of the restrictions as requires. And again, if I go in and put the CBU-87s, I go, damn it, I really wanted the CBU-87s on there. I'll do that. So I'll put the 6 back on. And then, sorry, I picked the wrong one. So let's do 6 CBU-87s. Notice it takes the fuel tank back off. So again, you can go back and forth, but that's on purpose for it to be able to enforce those restrictions. So you can see the effect of how those work. Notice on the air-to-air load, I've got all of the Juliet, Limas, Mikes, Papas for the AIM-9s. So those have all been added. And then I've got the different types of AIM-120s. Obviously, you can't carry AIM-7s on the rails, but you can carry them on the CFTs. All right, so that's enough on the load editor. Again, it's one of those things that you just have to go in and play with, and you guys can figure out how to get those loaded up. But it's unfortunately not going to let you, actually, fortunately in my mind, it's not going to let you do the outlandish hog-it loads where you start loading all kinds of mixed stuff together. That's not realistic. So it is going to enforce most of those restrictions, and it's pretty good about that. The one final thing I want to show you over here on the mission editor page, over on this far right selection. So these are additional properties for the aircraft, so go ahead and select those. This is now where you can now select additional stuff, so you can load up NVGs and the NVG filters on the jet. You can also load this through the rearm page, the crew chief page, but you want to select this if you're going to do an air spawn. Obviously, you can't have the crew chief load you while you're in the air, so this is the only way you can load up NVGs if you're going to do an air spawn. The cold aircraft needs GC alignment. Obviously, it's relatively self-explanatory. I want to check this if I want to do a cold start, and I want to go through the full alignment. If I uncheck it, the aircraft is basically going to be automatically aligned, and that's for the guys who want to do the cold start, but they don't want to go through the full alignment. So essentially, the INS is already aligned and up and ready to go. This is an interesting one, the time airborne. This relates to the amount of drift that you're going to get in the INS. It's not really self-explanatory, which is why I want to show you here. So for instance, if you have it at 0, the aircraft is going to do a normal drift from the time that you air spawn. And again, this is only for an air spawn. So if I air spawn in, it's going to start from 0, and it's going to do the normal 0.4 nautical miles per hour drift over the amount of time. So if you fly for an hour, the INS will drift roughly about half a mile or less. If I want to induce some additional drift in there, because I'm not going to fly for 2 or 3 hours, but let's say I want the effect of being airborne for a long transit sortie, and I really want to challenge myself, I can go ahead and set that for an hour or whatever number I want. And then when I jump into an air spawn, it will pretend as if the airplane has been airborne for an hour, and it will start with about 0.4 nautical miles of drift for that hour, and then it will then pick up normally from there, and so on. So that's what that means. So you can challenge yourself to a whole shit ton of drift if you want to do that. The cold aircraft and alert status, this is where we can do the stored heading alignment, because the way a real alert aircraft is going to work is you have to get in the jet, fire it up, at least get ground power on it, do a full alignment, shut it down, and then don't move the aircraft. Obviously, we can't really do that in DCS. So this is simulating that you've done all that stuff, and now I spawn into the jet on the ground, and now I can do a stored heading alignment as if I did all the other preparatory work prior to that. So that's the way that little option works. The main thing I want to show you is on the ground through the mission editor, you can now set laser codes for each individual station if you've got laser guided bombs. So let's say I've got a laser guided bomb on, let's put a GB24 on the wing pylons. And notice if I put a GB24, it takes those CBUs away. Let's put some GB12s on the CFTs, and let's put a GB10 on the center line. So now what I can do is I can go ahead, I can put individual laser codes for each of those guys if I wanted to have something different. It defaults to 1688. So if you do nothing and you spawn in the jet, all of these bombs are going to all be set automatically to 1688. If I want individual laser codes, let's say I want the GB24s and the outboards to be 1511, it assumes that it already has the 1 in front of it, so I'm just going to type in 511, and then 511 for the outboards on the other side, and then let's say I want the CFTs to be, I don't know, pick something, 1542, so we'll put 542 and 543. Let's say I was going to work with the JTAC and those were the laser codes he wanted. And then let's say I just want to leave the center line at 1688. So that's the way it's going to be. So when you spawn in the jet in the mission editor, and I've already loaded weapons in the mission editor, these are the laser codes that you're going to find once you get in the jet. If you do a rearm, and I'll show you this once we jump in, if you do a rearm, then all that gets wiped out and it goes back to default of 1688, and there is a way to change it through the kneeboard card, but I'm not going to go into that right now. All right, so that's enough for the mission editor stuff. I just wanted to show you all that stuff. Actually, one more thing. Let me show you the stuff down here. So if I check solo flight for multiplayer, it basically locks you out of going into the back seat. I personally, if I do multiplayer by myself, I'm going to leave solo flight unchecked, but that's just me. But it does lock you out from the back seat. Aircraft control priority, this is pretty interesting. So what this means is if you have pilot set and the Wizzo wants to fly, he's got to then request permission to fly. And then if you give it to him, then he can take control of the jet and fly it. Conversely, if Wizzo has priority, then the pilot has to ask permission to fly. If I have always ask, that means both guys have to ask if the other one has control. And then the one here, if you guys really want to fight over the jet, it just means that you can take control of the jet without asking, and then you guys can fight back and forth over control of the jet. Usually the most common one would be to have pilot control priority. That way, if he doesn't want the Wizzo to fly, then he can lock him out. And then here, disable multi-crew. Again, this is just somewhat redundant here. Actually, what it does is it locks out anybody from asking to spawn in. So if you don't want to be bothered with other people asking to jump in your backseat slot, you can check that, and then it basically locks that out from asking. Anyway, so that's it for the mission editor. What we're going to do is I'll end here, and then what we'll do is we'll jump into the jet with this loadout, and then what I'll do is I'll wipe it out, and then we'll do a rearm. So we start from scratch, and this is important because I want to show you how you can deal with all that in the PACS. All right, so I'll end here, and then we'll pick back up in the jet. Okay, guys, so we've jumped in the jet after going through the mission editor. Basically, we have the same load as what I showed you just after we left. So if you remember from the earlier PACS, on the menu page, we're going to choose the armament menu, and then we'll choose the air to ground, and you can see that we have the loadout pretty much just as I showed you before. I'm not going to go through all the program stuff because we did that on the previous PACS 1 and Part 1 and Part 2. But what I do want to show you is, if you remember we set all those laser codes, if you open up the kneeboard and you forgot what laser code you set for each of the stations, you can go down here and it will automatically list the laser codes that you set. So that's a really cool way to go. Oh shit, what did I set for the left conformal? Oh yeah, 1542. That way I remember to change the laser code before I start using it. The big thing here is, unlike other DCS aircraft, we've kept the realism of you are not able to change the laser codes once you're in flight. So remember, in real life, you set them on the ground. Once you take off, you're stuck with what you have. So there's no changing the laser code on the bombs. You obviously can change the laser code on the target pod to match what you have on the bomb. So you have to remember what the bomb is set to, especially if you start mixing laser codes for different stations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and do a rearm to show you what it looks like and how to set it up, because there are some unique things. So I'll go ahead and do a rearm, and I'll go ahead and load up some different stuff. So let's change everything. I'll put a AMRAM I'll put some fuel tanks out on the wings. Put a AIM-9 mic on the inboards. I'm going to put some air-to-air missiles on the left CFT, just because I'm badass today, and we're going to kill a lot of stuff. I'm going to I'll leave the GBU-10 on the center line, and then on the right CFT, I'm going to put some CBU-87s. Again, to show you how to program those mainly, we'll put some fuel tanks. Notice I can put fuel tanks if I have 3 CBU-87s because those are all in the inboard row, and they're not sticking out into the tank. If I put 6 on there, I'm not able to do the tanks. Again, I'll put some missiles on the inboards. I'll put some AIM-9s and some AIM-120s. Here also you can select the different liveries as well, so that's kind of cool. We can set the tail number if we want to change all that, and then all the normal stuff for the loadout is exactly as it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and request that. And then what I want you to see is once that's done, all of these stations are going to change. And this is real life, as if they did a load. The jet is not going to know, unless it's a smart weapon like a JDAM or a WICMED, WCMD. It's not going to know what that station is. So now notice rearming is now complete, and notice now we have these stations where we put the bombs. So remember, we put 3 CBU-87s on the left CFT. We put a GBU-10 on the center line. We put air-to-air missiles on the right CFT, which is why they're not shown up here. This is only the air-to-ground stores. And then the fuel tanks themselves will auto-identify. So this is important. If you don't go and identify what these individual stations are for the air-to-ground, the jet's not going to know how to do anything with them. So this is what's different from the last time I did the PACS, is we've now added the air-to-ground load. So the way we do that is we back out 1 using the menu button, and then we come down here to the air-to-ground load, and this is now where we're going to identify the stations. We're going to identify the stores that match up to the stations. So the way you do this is, because I know I've got CBU-87s on the left CFT, I'm going to step until I start seeing the CBU-87s. So now here's the CBU-87s. I'll go ahead and select that, and then select it. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to marry it up to the station. So you select that, and then notice once that happens, the fuse load for the CBU-87s, this is unique to CBUs only, the fuse load will now show up. So while you're here, it's important that you go ahead and set the fusing, because this is the only place that you can set the CBU-87 fuse options. So what we're going to do is we'll go into fuse, and you'll see the CBU-87s. I've got the 1 quantity, and now I've got the ability to select all this. So this is the integral time. If I choose to use the integral fuse, so I can cycle through all the different preset times. Doesn't really matter what you set, because we're going to use the fuzzy 39 for the burst height option. So this is when I select fuse, I just toggle it, and it goes between integral and fuzzy 39. Integral is a timer. The FZU 39 is the burst height. If I have integral set, notice the burst height goes away. If I set the fuzzy 39, then the burst height is now there. So now this is the way I can select the height of burst, so I can cycle through the different options, and it basically is just in a rotary, and it goes back around to 300 feet, 5, and so on. So say I want to set 1200 as burst height, and on CBU-87s I also have the ability to set the spin. So you can go through all the different spin options. We'll set spin 2, and then now notice those are all now reflected once I hit enter. And now I hit enter, and all those options are now set correctly. There's a little bit of a visual thing here. This is going to get fixed where we've got the stuff just needs to come down 1 line. That'll get fixed here really soon. So once I have that, I go back into the menu, and then now notice I still want to identify the center line. So I'm looking for that GBU-10. So now I'm going to continue to step. I don't see it here on that menu, and yep, there's my GBU-10. So I'll select GBU-10 mics, point it over to the centerline station, and now I'm done, because remember the fuel auto identifies. So I'm done here. So now I'm going to go back into the menu, And now, notice once I'm in the air-to-ground, the normal air-to-ground armament page, those weapons are now identified with the correct quantity and the correct type. And without that correct type, you're not able to do the program stuff. So again, this is exactly the way I would do it. I'm going to go ahead and program the CBUA7s because you haven't seen those before. So this is where, let's say I want to set that as a CDIP program. So I have to select it first. I've got program 1 set. I select CDIP. Let's do a ripple single quantity 3. And I'm going to do 150 feet interval here. And now notice the difference between a CBU and a normal regular iron bomb is instead of a nose or tail or nose tail, I've got the option to set time or height. So if you remember back to that fuse arm page, I had the option of the time or the fuzzy 39 for the burst height. So those are both still an option, and now I can set it here. Let's say I'm going to go with the height option, and now it's going to use the 1200 feet. If I set it to the time option, it would use the 0.95 seconds as the timer there. So that's why it's important to set that correctly. So let's leave it on height, and then we're done. And then I would go over to the program 2, select the GBU10. Let's say I want to do an auto step nose tail, and then that's done. And then I just go back and leave it on the program that I want to drop. So that is all of the stuff I wanted to show you for the air-to-ground load. The biggest thing is if you do the rearm menu, and you do the rearm once you set something new in here, because again, if you came back empty, you would have to rearm everything. And then once you set air-ground weapons, it's going to now only show you the quantity because the jet doesn't know what's actually there. And that reflects real life because the jet is not going to be able to identify a non-smart weapon. Later on, when we add JDAMs and WCMDs, WCMDs, a wind-corrected munitions dispenser, those are smart weapons. And when I load those through that rearm page, it should then identify the type because now it's plugged to an umbilical to the jet, and the jet is now able to identify it. So that's it. This is the new features for the PACS. So there's PACS Part 3. Hopefully that answered or will answer a lot of the questions when you guys get the jet in your hands, and you can go through and start playing with some of the different PACS options. All right, as always, I'm free to answer questions on the Discord. You guys can come join me there and ask questions away, and I'll do my best to answer them. So that's me, Natso. I will see you soon. My next video I'm starting to work on is the air-to-ground delivery tutorials. So now I'm going to go through all the different air-to-ground options of how to get bombs, weapons on foreheads. All right, so that's it. Natso's out. We'll talk to you soon.